Here we are, last session for today. Joy Monsma is the Chief Difference Maker and founder of Teneo Consulting Inc. She is trained as a Six Sigma Black Belt, holds a Master of Business Administration, volunteers in the community, and brought Disrupt HR to Northern Alberta. Teneo Consulting Inc. has been providing organizational development expertise to help companies solve people, structure, and process challenges since 2010. Joy's work in organizational development has made a difference in for-profit, not-for-profit, post-secondary, healthcare, and faith-based organization. Her public speaking has taken her as far as a field as Croatia. Joy's written work has contributed to Harvard Business Review and the HR magazine, in addition to several blogs, both business and lifestyle. Welcome, Joy, and thank you so much for devoting your time in preparing a keynote speech for the HR Week conference.
Thank you so much. I just caught a little bit at the tail end of the last session, and I loved what Matt Burns had to say about grab your P&L and wrap your arms around it. You're going to hear a little bit more on that from different angles throughout our Accidental Org Design session. I'm coming to you live from Edmonton, Alberta. It's about 8:30 in the morning, and it is minus 10 degrees Celsius and still dark. I know you've had a full day, but mine is just starting, so let's go. Accidental or intentional? How is your organization set up? Most of us work in an accidental organizational design. The company adds people, we form departments, we develop communication channels, and ways of making decisions over time that are often less than optimal. And frequently, org design is thought of simply as an org chart, a depiction of who works with whom, where does authority lie. And this kind of approach is as one-dimensional as the org chart is on a piece of paper. Much of my work involves going into organizations and helping them to assess and rethink how they work. We ask questions such as, how does the work flow? How are decisions made? Who makes them? Where does the financial responsibility lie? Grab your P&L, wrap your arms around it. And how and with whom do employees exchange information and communication that they require to do their work? Intentional org design, on the other hand, involves ongoing review, discussion, forecasting. It's more of a holistic attempt to position your business for success. And it really doesn't matter whether you are in a small, medium, or large enterprise. Most businesses face challenges around org design. Small businesses develop organically, and they don't tend to address org design intentionally until they hit growth or financial barriers. Larger organizations are not automatically good at org design either. They tend to get large and unwieldy structures over time, and they make the same mistake as the small and medium enterprises by failing to employ intentional design until they run into the challenges. Redesigns are demanded then as a way to stop financial bleeding. Is your organization one that has had an accidental or an intentional organizational design philosophy? And what does your design look like if it was put in a picture? Is it flat or is it deep? A flat design has minimal layers between those on the front line and those holding the keys to the strategy. And in some circles, you'll hear, a flat design is best. But you know what? A few layers are okay if all the other aspects of good org design are working. Keep in mind, though, that org design is a little like building a layer cake. At some point, you may have one too many layers, and then the cake collapses. The more layers you have, the more likely it is that people are uncertain or unable to obtain decisions and resources in a timely manner. Lots of layers often impede the flow of information as well. You may think you are struggling with silos, when in fact what you're really struggling with is information flow and decision making. And these two things can make the organization very vulnerable to disruption. And I'm not talking about the good kind that drives creative growth. Boston Consulting Group did some research and determined that more than 8 layers of management with fewer than 7 spans of control is going to be a really sluggish and bureaucratic organization. No company sets out with the desire or the goal to be sluggish or bureaucratic. That's a death knell if ever I heard one. Businesses want to be nimble. They want to be agile. They want to be responsive. Oh, and plugged in, whatever the latest buzzword is. But you get the idea. Dynamic, growing, and changing. The truth is that businesses and organizations do not survive long if they become sluggish and bureaucratic. Is your organization in danger of being diagnosed as sluggish and bureaucratic? If so, get clinical. Take a hard look at what you have created or what has just evolved. There are many types assigned to organizations, and depending on which article you happen to read, you might see that there are 4 types of organization, or you might see that there are 7 or more. In my experience, and throughout a career that spanned about 35 years, there is no one type of organization. These descriptors are not mutually exclusive, and in my opinion, almost every company I've ever interacted with, either as an employee or a consultant, is a hierarchical to some extent. And whether you'd consider your organization as a functional, divisional, or even holacratic one, there are still levels of power and status and pay and authority that are incremental and therefore by definition hierarchical. These types, which are commonly referred to in articles and texts, are rather simplistic. Organizations are made up of people, and that makes an organization a dynamic organism that is both weird and wonderful and complex. So for instance, a functional organization is generally arranged by work functions. So your marketing, your operations, your finance, HR. Divisional organizations can be designed around a market or a product or a geographical area. A matrix organization is often a hybrid of structures, and its most common identifying factor is dual reporting. Now, over 20 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Brian Robertson came up with the idea of holacracy. I even have trouble saying it. But about 5 years ago, the rest of the world caught on and thought, wow, this is really cool. Let's all do this if we can. And Zappos was frequently touted as a really good example of a holacracy at work. But as of 2016, Zappos was already moving away from the model. A holacracy does have clear expectations. It does work with teams. They're assigned a specific purpose. They typically have a constitution, a common set of rules. And all of this sounds good, and it can work. But the weakness is that the power and responsibility lies with a team, not in specific individuals, which means that at the end of the day, no one is actually able or accountable for making hard decisions. I would suggest your organization is networked to some degree, which simply means you have connections or links between groups, departments, teams, or if you're into the tech world, maybe nodes. You may not have as many connections as you would need or like, but there are some natural ones that probably exist today. And you also probably have some degree of teams functioning, even within a divisional structure. If you think about your own organization, I expect you will be able to identify with multiple types on this list. And as you think about the types, consider the history of your organization. Every company has historic roots and growth rings that give us a hint about the health of the organization year over year. When a tree is thriving, it will have a good growing year and the growth ring will be wider. And when that same tree is stressed by environmental factors like drought, for instance, it will be evident in the growth rings as well. A company is not much different. On a good year, that P&L looks awesome. On a bad year, it sucks. Think of org design as the environment that either facilitates good, healthy growth or inhibits growth. So is your organization making money or losing money? This will be good to know. No matter how altruistic your social goals are as a company, it is impossible to carry out those goals if you are not making money. Does your org design facilitate achievement of the org strategy? Think about it. Have you actually set up your design so that it works in tandem with your strategy? When someone within your organization hits a roadblock, so they need resources, they need decisions made, where do they go for help? Those are the questions you need to be asking yourself. And what has technology done to your org structure? Have you implemented technology with little thought for how it's changed how you work together and how information flows between people within your organizations? So one of the critical and key factors and mistakes that we see over and over again within organizations. Did you adapt to the technology, or did you force fit the technology to an old structure? There are impacts, both good and bad, that result from org design that your company has either adopted accidentally or put in place intentionally. And sometimes we excel despite ourselves, at least for a period of time. Eventually, though, if your design is accidental, it will limit your future growth and possibly put your organization on a path to oblivion. Great organizations employ intentional org design because they want to avoid becoming irrelevant. Intentional design expedites good decision making. It encourages information and communication flow. It promotes accountability, and it provides a clear line of sight to the end goals. Employees are typically empowered to get their work done, and leaders are equipped to lead. It's interesting that intentional org design sounds very, very similar to good governance. The Institute of Governance defines governance as clearly identifying who has the power, who makes decisions, how are others' voices heard, and how is accountability determined. Working on your governance will help you to start at the beginning with your customer. Establishing short and long-term metrics throughout your organization that will point to success or failure will facilitate adaptability and agility, but only if you use the information wisely. Ultimately, all these activities will allow you as an organization to deliver the strategy more effectively. Let's say you've revisited your accountabilities. You've implemented new ideas for empowering employees. You've gone through all your roles and checked off the other items we mentioned, but things still aren't running smoothly, and the strategy seems out of reach. If you've worked at the executive level, you probably spent days together on executive retreats, discussing and drafting strategy, only to go back to work and try to execute the strategy within a design that does not support or facilitate that strategy. I'm tripping over it because it just gets me excited. A critical piece of org design is aligning the people, the processes, and the system with the strategy. You may have clarified roles, but do you have the right roles? Are the right people in those roles? That's messy and hard work, and roles change, and people change. Do not design your roles around the individuals who are in them. Keep in mind that roles are simply the roadmap that should encompass accountability, skills, knowledge, and competencies. They just tell us what we need to be doing in that particular job from day to day. Assuming you get your roles straight, do those roles interact and carry out the necessary processes with the least amount of intervention? Or is the enterprise using the best possible practices and the optimal structure? Are all moving parts working together to turn that strategy into a reality? If they are, you're well on your way to some good chemistry within your organization. One of the most difficult parts, though, to deal with in organizational design is the human factor, the employees. Some will work with you and some will work against you. The magic lies in achieving a design that permits your employees to do their work in a way that is rewarding. And getting to that point may mean completely reimagining how work occurs within your organization, because historically we've gone down a path of specialization, which removes employees from having a view to the big picture. Specialization isn't bad in and of itself, if the right communication paths and linkages exist. A common mistake organizations make is failing to explain to all their employees how their work fits into the strategy. And one concrete way to engage employees in the overall strategy is to roll it out to every single team and every single member and facilitate an understanding of how their area of work or specialization plays into the strategy. And this can be super effective. I worked for a little while with an organization that delivered healthcare. They had over 10,000 employees. And we wanted people who were right on the front lines, serving patients, day-to-day care, to understand how they fit the strategy. And so we did this exercise of taking that strategy all the way down to the front lines. And it changed how some people viewed what they did. When employees feel that their work is rewarding, it allows them to connect emotionally. Organizations are made up of people. They're not just it's not just numbers and strategy on paper, it's people. And organizations rely on people. No matter how much technology there still needs to be some number of people working there. And as people, we have this inherent need to feel that we're contributing, that we belong, that our presence is respected, and that what we do makes a difference. And consequently, people, processes, and systems must be designed to acknowledge and honor those aspects of humans while facilitating the work required. And one of the hard decisions may be having to weed out some folks because possibly their mindset or their skills or their knowledge no longer align with getting that strategy played out and into action. Org design is not a one and done affair. It's messy, challenging work, and it is never over. If you adopt an intentional organizational design mindset, you're going to be constantly reviewing and adjusting it. And some days you're going to feel like you have been dragged through the mud. But it takes a team. It takes a team to get intentional org design right. Please don't believe a consultant who tells you they have a model and a method that you can just roll out. Org design is not checkbox easy. As you saw earlier, there is no one single type. It's not possible for one organization to simply adopt and roll out what others have done. You're going to have to do your own individual work. You're going to have to get down and dirty in the trenches. It's hard work, but it's worth it. When you begin to assess your organizational design, start with the question, is the organization financially viable? If you're not, you better call in the emergency brigade because you got bigger problems. Then sit down and determine if your overall org design serves the enterprise well. Be on the lookout for slow, unwieldy decision-making, for poor or broken communication paths, for uncertainty around accountability. Employee turnover is another good symptom of something gone wrong. I guess you'd say it's a bad symptom. And a lack of clarity. If there's a lack of clarity around your mission and your strategy, then people don't understand what the organization is about or how they fit. And these are all symptoms that generally show up in the form of low employee engagement on the dreaded annual employee survey. Fix the issues that affect people, processes, and systems first. You can draw that structure out anytime. And in fact, as you fix the people, the processes, and the systems, the structure will emerge. But take a serious look at your governance. Consider the span of control. How many direct reports is the right number? And please, don't stay silent if your organization is assigning teams that are too large. Remember that the size of the team is dependent to some degree on how routine and structured the work itself is. Think about the competencies that you need to sustain the organization over time. Develop the overall org design accordingly. Review your reward systems to ensure they encourage the kinds of behaviors that you need. Ask yourself whether your talent management practices are working for you or against you. The future of org design is upon us, and we need to be adaptable and collaborative. One of the key learnings is that org design has to become more fluid. The world is changing faster and faster, and we can't just sit still. We are long overdue in changing our views on org design. Network teams are being touted as the next great design, replacing holacracy. But even the formation of teams has to be fluid. Don't expect to put teams into place and then leave them indefinitely. Think about what COVID has done to work. In Canada, almost overnight, even organizations that were stuck in the past had no choice but to close their offices, send their employees home to work from home. Organizations that were never designed to have employees working remotely had to figure out how to do so. But many roles don't have the right skills and competencies built in to support those employees doing good work remotely. I worked with a professional association about 2 years ago, and one of the things that I was pressing them to do was to adapt their people and processes to the technology that was in place behind the scenes. They had implemented the technology about 4 years ago, and it could do a tremendous amount of work for them, but they had not adjusted their roles, processes, and systems to match. And one of the reasons and pushback that I got was that, well, we're a professional organization, we have to be extremely careful, and we can't allow certain things to be held outside of our facility in any other servers. They have to be on site. And they really boxed themselves in because they didn't understand fully how to use the technology that they had, how to secure it, and then how to facilitate work in a different way. That organization got shut down with COVID, and their employees had to work from home. Overnight, they had to figure it out. And you really don't want to be in that position. So there's no such thing as a static assignment to a department that remains as it is until the next organizational glacier goes through, recurving the org structure. Org design is being affected by and will continue to evolve alongside the increasing application of artificial intelligence. There's something called organizational network analysis that's on the scenes now. It's being conducted and used already. And what it does is it uses AI to sift through how organizations communicate and how work is happening. And then that knowledge is being used to inform better organizational design. That's a really exciting frontier. Henry Schultz wrote an article for the Journal of Innovation in 2017, and he said that organizational structures will likely become less rigid. As employees are able to spot more transient opportunities for useful collaboration, there will be greater transparency of knowledge, and work will increase the span of control. It will allow a single manager to monitor and mentor a greater number of people. And once information systems can widely distribute information concerning individuals and their work, and also organize that information so as not to drown people in it, experts can begin to organize their problem-solving efforts more effectively. And that is how we may see a renaissance of self-organized work. If you're interested in moving from accidental to intentional design, be methodical. Look at the overall picture. Agree on what your aspirational goals are. What is the strategy? Where are you going? It's like having a roadmap, and you've got to put the pins in it and guide people from place to place. Review your governance. Take the time to look at how decisions are made. Design your roles to get the outcomes that you need. Do not design the roles around the individuals. Be realistic with the spans of control and with workloads. Establish effective communication. Nothing else really matters if communication within an organization is either filtered or restricted. And good communication really relies on honesty, transparency, and responsiveness. There is nothing more frustrating for anybody in either an employer-employee situation or a consultant-consultee situation than not being able to get information to flow back and forth easily, honestly, and transparently. And finally, there is a competency which we all are going to need in spades going forwards. Korn Ferry calls the competency situational adaptability. It is defined as adapting your approach and your demeanor in real time to match the shifting demands of different situations. Let's listen to that again. Adapting your approach and demeanor in real time to match the shifting demands of situations. That's where we're at. That's what we need. And then there's a quote from Deloitte's 2017 article of focus on human capital trends. Designing the organization of the future is difficult, sometimes messy, it's a trial and error. It's not an exercise on paper. It is continuous, dynamic, and in a sense, a never-ending process. And that, I believe, is a timeless quote on org design. It's never finished, but it is rewarding and exciting work. Thank you.